Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling a really foundational text. It's often kind of misunderstood, maybe seen just as a way to get rich quick.
That's right. People sometimes think it's all about greed.
Exactly. But when you look at the whole philosophy, it's actually building this blueprint for something, well, much deeper. We're diving into how material success is really linked to your psychological well being, your inner peace.
Precisely. Our sources today, they really explore these twin goals,
Yeah.
wealth and internal peace. Like you said, many people just stop at the money part.
Yeah.
But our mission here is to, peel back those layers. We want to get to the core principles that make success last. Because the author himself, he figured out off of the hard way that, well, there is more to life than making money.
And that realization, it didn't just come out of nowhere, did it? To really get why it's so central, we kind of have to start with a pretty huge failure in his own life.
Oh, absolutely. It's key to understanding the shift. See, he had this incredible early success. I mean, serious opulence.
Like, what are we talking about?
Multiple Rolls Royces, a massive estate up in the Catskills, north of New York City, a whole staff of it was, the whole 9 yards. And he really tied that success to showing it off.
So, pure external display, living large.
Totally. But that very extravagance, that focus on just the show of wealth, it happened before he'd really built up the, let's say, philosophical guardrails. And it led straight to disaster.
How so?
Well, all that lavish spending meant that even before the Great Depression hit in 1929, he already lost most of it. The estate, the cars, gone.
Wow. So, the crash wasn't even the main cause for him personally.
It likely didn't help, but the foundation was already shaky because of the spending. It was a massive collapse for him. But interestingly, he later said he was actually fortunate to lose it all then.
Fortunate. That sounds counterintuitive.
Well, yeah, but it forced him to learn that lesson. Wealth just for show, or wealth you accumulate obsessively, it ends up owning you. It becomes your master, not your servant.
Okay, that makes sense. So, that failure, that loss, it really set the stage for his life's work.
Completely. It established the fundamental lesson. Real, lasting wealth has to be paired with genuine, unshakable peace of mind.
So, for you, the listener, this deep dive is almost like a shortcut. It helps you understand the core ideas that let the author climb out of what he called his heritage of five evils.
Yeah, those were poverty, ignorance, fear, illiteracy, and hopelessness. Quite a list to overcome.
Definitely. So, this is really about the blueprint for mastering yourself first. Okay, so let's start right at the beginning. If the goal is self mastery, lasting success, where's the first step according to this philosophy?
It all starts with perhaps the oldest advice there is: know thyself, live your own life. Simple, right, but profound.
So, the ancient Greek wisdom.
Exactly.
Huh.
The author is absolutely insistent on this. He says, look, if you don't truly know who you are, and if you're not living authentically as yourself, you just cannot use the great secret effectively. The power of belief we'll get into later, it won't work to shape your future
Why?
because it all hinges on taking complete, total possession of your own mind, being the master of your own thoughts.
And what stops us from doing that, I found this part fascinating. The text talks about this corrosive force, the damage of external opinions, or the voice of authority.
Ah, yes. That's huge. It's
Yeah.
all those external judgments that try to define you based on, frankly, very limited information or observation.
Can you give an example?
Think about Thomas Edison. We all know him as a genius inventor. But when he was a kid, he got kicked out of school in the early grades
Kicked out. Why?
because his teacher, the voice of authority, in that context, decided his mind was addled. That's the word used. Basically, that he couldn't handle school, that he was too dull to learn.
Wow. Imagine hearing that as a child if you actually believed that label.
Right. If he'd internalized that external assessment, think of what the world might have lost. His success only happened because he fundamentally rejected that voice. He decided, no, I'm going to live my own life, control my own mind.
And he realized he didn't need that specific structure, right? He could learn and direct research in his own way.
Precisely. He knew he could leverage the technical knowledge of others without needing to have it all memorized himself. He possessed his own mind.
And it's not just about historical geniuses, is it?
Not at all. Look at Madame Schumann Heink. She became one of the all-time great opera stars. But early on, a music teacher delivered this crushing verdict, told her to just, quote, go back to her sewing machine. Basically said she didn't have the talent.
Ouch, another voice of authority trying to shut down potential.
Exactly. But like Edison, she had already taken possession of her own mind. That negativity didn't break her. It actually sharpened her resolve. She became fiercely determined to prove that teacher wrong. And she did.
Her refusal to be defined by someone else's opinion literally enriched the world with her music.
It really did. And the author himself went through this, the really powerful story. After his mother passed away, he was, well, acting out, got labeled a problem child. People were even comparing him to the outlaw Jesse James, saying he might become a criminal.
Seriously? Jesse James?
Yeah, he was apparently carrying a six-shooter and heading down a pretty dark path.
So, what turned it around? What stopped that trajectory?
It wasn't punishment. It was a single, incredibly powerful, positive statement from his stepmother. She stepped in and told his father, essentially, "You're wrong about this boy. He's not mean. He's actually very alert and intelligent. All he needs is a worthy objective for that mind of his."
Wow. Just one sentence like that.
That's the core lesson right there.
Yeah.
He said it was the very first positive thing he'd ever really heard someone say about him. He gave him that worthy objective. It stopped the whole six-shooter phase and put him on the path that eventually led him to interviewing successful people, writing, and crucially getting that commission from Andrew Carnegie, which changed everything.
So he channeled that maybe aggressive energy into something constructive.
Exactly. He possessed that energy and redirected it.
Okay. So once you have that self possession, that control of your own mind, how do you deal with the inevitable roadblocks? This leads to that really interesting idea, adversity as a tonic,
Yeah, this one can feel a bit strange at first. The core idea is every adversity carries the seed of an equal or greater benefit.
which is totally counter to how we usually feel, right? Failure, setbacks,
Mhm.
they feel like, well, just bad news, like we're victims.
Right. But the person who has mastered themselves, they understand setbacks differently. They see them not as permanent defeats, but almost like tuition payments.
Yeah.
You're paying to learn a valuable lesson that will ultimately benefit you more than the temporary loss hurt you.
Okay. Can you give an example of that in practice?
Absolutely. Look at the story of Arthur Duescio. He inherited a family business making mobile homes. And it wasn't just struggling, it was hopelessly failing. It had already wiped out his father's entire savings.
So most people would probably just cut their losses, right? Liquidate whatever's left.
That would be the logical thing, maybe. But DiGancio saw the adversity itself as the opportunity. He thought, okay, this industry is stuck. What if I apply strategies from a totally different field? He started using methods common in big auto manufacturing, like General Motors.
In the mobile home business? Like what?
Things like frequent model changes, keeping the product line feeling fresh and new,
Hmm.
building proper systematic dealer networks, essentially applying sophisticated large-scale marketing and production ideas to what was seen as a sort of simple, maybe even distressed industry.
And did it work?
Did it ever?
Oh,
Sales
good.
exploded. We're talking 500% growth in just 4 years. Diageo himself ended up making millions, about $5 million, from a business that was basically bankrupt just a short time before.
So the adversity, the failure, it forced the innovation. It contained the seed of that massive success.
That's the idea. The necessity created by the failure drove the radical change that led to huge benefit.
But to actually do that, to turn adversity into benefit, you need a certain mindset about the past, don't you? The text stresses closing the doors on the past.
Oh, absolutely critical. You cannot find wealth, and you definitely cannot find peace of mind if you're mentally living in a graveyard of unpleasant experiences, as the author puts it.
We do tend to dwell, though. Regrets, bitterness, replaying failures, running those endless postmortems in our heads.
And it's incredibly draining. It sucks up all the mental energy you need for positive action, for creation.
Is there a story that illustrates
A
this?
powerful one is Arnold Reed. He was a life insurance salesman. He found out that a close friend, someone he really trusted, had betrayed him.
Oh,
The friend's actions cost Reed all his future renewal commissions on policies he'd sold. It was a huge financial and emotional blow. The shock was so deep it actually made him physically ill. Or rather, non-physically ill.
yeah.
He went home, took to his bed, and basically started wasting away. Doctors examined him. They found nothing physically wrong. Their diagnosis, he had a sick soul. They essentially gave up hope for him.
Because the root cause wasn't medical, it was psychological despair from the betrayal.
Precisely. His life force had just withdrawn. He was stuck in that graveyard of the past betrayal. It wasn't until a friend gave him the author's book on success philosophy that anything changed.
What happened when he read it?
He described feeling this sudden, intense surge of power. Something clicked. He got out of bed, rallied some friends, and didn't just recover his old life. He went on to found a major company the great Commonwealth Life Insurance Company.
Wow. So he literally transmuted that poison, that bitterness from the past betrayal into the energy to build something huge and positive.
That's exactly it. He closed the door on the past injury and used the lesson to fuel future creation.
It sounds like even the greatest figures in history had to master this. The text mentions Lincoln.
Yes, Lincoln faced constant failure and adversity, lost loves, difficult legal cases, multiple political defeats before finally reaching the presidency. The key was he never allowed his mind to, quote, drag failure and discouragement after him as a prisoner drags his chains.
He didn't let the past define his present mental state.
He processed the defeat, learned what he could, and then decisively closed the door on the negative emotion. Move forward.
Sometimes the adversity isn't just emotional or financial, it's physical, like Edison's deafness.
Right. A clear physical handicap. It happened when he was a boy, apparently. A man lifted him roughly by the ears, damaging his hearing permanently. A tragedy by any measure.
But the philosophy suggests he turned even that into something useful.
He chose to. He actually claimed his deafness was a benefit in some ways.
How could deafness be a benefit for someone like him?
He said it saved him from wasting time on worthless chatter. More profoundly, he said it taught me to hear from within.
Meaning,
In a world full of noise and distraction, his physical limitation actually created a kind of mental sanctuary. It forced him to rely entirely on his internal thoughts, his deep focus, his inner world.
so he transmuted a physical liability into essentially a mental superpower of focus.
That's the ultimate example of self mastery, isn't it? Taking what looks like a disadvantage and finding the hidden seed of benefit within it. Learning to silence the external noise and really tune into the power inside your own mind.
Okay, so that inner tuning, that self possession, it naturally leads us into the actual mechanics of the mind required for this kind of success, starting with the basic mental attitude or PMA.
Yes, positive mental attitude. And it's not just, thinking happy thoughts. The philosophy is clear. PMA is an absolute prerequisite. You need it for wealth and you need it for peace of mind. They go together.
What makes PMA effective then? What's the key ingredient?
Definiteness of purpose, knowing exactly what you want, what you're aiming for. When you have that clear goal, your work becomes wholehearted. You're fully engaged
And that focus pushes out the negative stuff.
automatically. If your mind is absorbed by achieving a worthy objective, there's just less room, less mental energy for those draining concerns, things like finding fault with others, looking for shortcuts, constantly watching the clock. Constructive focus crowds out destructive noise.
Okay, so you have this positive attitude, this definite purpose. How do you direct that energy effectively? The text breaks down our driving forces into the 9 basic motives.
Right. This is really fundamental to understanding why we do what we do. And it's crucial because your peace of mind is directly tied to which of these motives you choose to act on habitually.
Let's list them out. There are 7 positive ones.
Yes, the 7 positive motives are the emotion of love, the emotion of sex, the desire for material gain, the desire for self preservation, the desire for freedom of body and mind, the desire for self expression, and finally, the desire for perpetuation of life after death or immortality,
Okay. And the 2 negative ones.
the emotion of anger and revenge, and the emotion of fear.
And the core message here is
You achieve lasting peace of mind only by consistently choosing to act on the 7 positive motives. You have to consciously avoid letting the negative ones, anger, revenge, fear, drive your actions. The truly great, successful individuals, the text argues, simply don't have time for nursing grudges or seeking revenge. Their mental energy is fully occupied by their constructive goals.
but these motives aren't always working together, are they? Sometimes they conflict. The source gives a really dramatic example of this. The conflict of motives, specifically material gain versus freedom of mind.
Oh, that's a pivotal story from the author's own early life. He was working for a bank owner, just scraping by financially. One day he walks into one of the bank branches,
Ah,
and the vault door is wide open, and scattered all over the counter is nearly $50,000 in cash. Greenbacks, just lying there.
50,000. That was an enormous sum back then. What happened?
The cashier, who was the employer's son and
Oh.
apparently quite unstable, had just left it there and walked out.
So the author is standing there, poor, needing money desperately, and there's this huge pile of untraceable cash.
Exactly. The motive of material gain must have been screaming at him. He could have easily pocketed half of it. Everyone would have just assumed the irresponsible son took it all. He could have been set for years.
So what did he do?
The other motive won out, the desire for freedom of mind. He realized that if he took the money, yes, he'd have material gain, but he'd instantly become a prisoner. He'd live in constant fear of discovery, consumed by guilt. He'd lose his inner peace, his freedom.
So he chose freedom over money.
He did. He carefully gathered the cash, locked it securely in the vault, and reported no shortage to his employer. He walked out of that bank, as he described it, completely free, feeling joyous and positive inside.
Even that choice had ripple effects, didn't it?
Huge ones. By staying honest, he maintained his reputation. His employer, impressed by his integrity, later sponsored him to go to law school. And that eventually led to the connections they got in the interview with Andrew Carnegie, which, as we said, launched his entire career in philosophy. That single decision, prioritizing mental freedom, shaped his destiny.
Wow. Okay. So, building on that idea of acting with integrity, asserting your own principles, we get to the concept of developing a healthy ego.
Yes. And the definition here is important. Ego isn't about arrogance or being self important. The philosophy defines it as the self assertive tendency of man. It's like the mind's spark plug. It's that inner drive that allows you to rise above perceived limitations or negative circumstances.
There's a great story illustrating this about the difference between how someone looks on the outside versus their inner drive. Edwin C. Barnes, right?
That's the one. Barnes wanted to work with Thomas Edison. He actually traveled all the way there by hopping freight trains, basically, riding in a boxcar.
So he must have arrived looking pretty rough.
Exactly. Dusty, clothes wrinkled, probably unshaven. The office staff apparently started mocking him, snickering at his appearance.
But his inner state was different.
Completely different. Barnes wasn't fazed by their judgment. He walked straight up to Edison, looked him in the eye, and confidently stated that Edison was fortunate to have the chance to get his services.
That took some serious nerve, given how he looked.
Immense nerve. But it was that inner confidence, that strong, healthy ego asserting itself despite the shabby exterior that impressed Edison. Edison hired him on the spot.
And Barnes later became successful.
Very successful. And interestingly, once he had achieved that success and wealth, he made a vow to himself.
Mhm.
Never again stand before any man without knowing that I was better dressed than he.
So he used the external marker of wealth later to reinforce the inner confidence he already possessed.
Precisely. The inner drive came first, the outer appearance followed as a confirmation.
Okay, so the ego is the spark plug. What if it's sputtering? What if someone's confidence is shot? The sources talk about something pretty radical: ego restoration as a kind of prescription.
Yeah, this is where the philosophy gets really hands-on, almost counterintuitive sometimes.
Yeah.
Take the example of Ray Cunliffe.
What was the situation?
He'd owned a successful Cadillac dealership, sold it, and then sort of lost his way. He became restless, his confidence dropped, he started looking shabby, and he was actually burning through his savings because he'd lost his consciousness. He didn't feel successful anymore.
So, what was the prescription from the author?
It sounds almost crazy, especially since Cunliffe was low on cash.
Yeah.
The author told him he had to do two things immediately. First, go buy himself a brand new top-of-the-line Cadillac. Second, buy his wife an expensive mink coat. We're talking an outlay of over $3,000 back then.
Wait, spend thousands he barely had when his problem was losing money. That sounds financially reckless. How does that fit the philosophy?
It's pure psychological intervention. It's not about financial logic in that moment. It's about reigniting the feeling of success, of opulence. The act of spending lavishly, of embodying success externally, was meant to jolt his ego back to life, to restore that self-assertive spark.
So act rich to start feeling rich again, which then enables you to become rich again.
That's the principle. Actions can shape belief. By acting decisively and embracing that feeling of prosperity, even artificially at first, he shifted his internal state. And did it work?
What happened?
The very next day, feeling restored, feeling like his old successful self again, he went to see a wealthy investor he'd previously been too intimidated to approach. He walked in with that renewed confidence and secured $150,000 in financing for a new venture.
Incredible. The ego was restored, and boom, prosperity followed almost instantly.
The external action broke the internal mental block. It's similar in a way to that story about the salesman who became terrified of rejection.
Oh, yeah, the one whose sales had plummeted because he just kept anticipating hearing no.
Exactly. He dreaded it so much he was basically projecting failure before he even opened his mouth. His confidence was completely gone.
And the solution was bizarre.
Definitely bizarre. The author suggested he pretend to be hard of hearing and start carrying one of those old-fashioned ear trumpets.
An ear trumpet. Why?
So that when a prospect inevitably said no, the salesman could just lift the trumpet, pretend he hadn't quite heard it, and enthusiastically continue his pitch as if the rejection never happened. He was literally filtering out the no's.
Did he actually do it?
He did, and the results were immediate. The first week, his closing rate shot up to 6 sales out of 9 prospects. Eventually, he didn't need the trumpet anymore.
Because using it broke that psychological fear loop. It stopped the no from sinking in and paralyzing him.
Exactly. He externalized the rejection, regained his confidence, and got back to his high performance.
These examples show how powerful controlling your own mental state is. This brings us to maybe one of the most complex and potentially controversial ideas in the source material, the transmutation of sex emotion.
Yes, this is a really critical concept for understanding where the sheer energy for major achievement comes from, according to this philosophy.
What's the core assertion?
It states that highly successful people tend to be highly sexed, meaning they possess a great deal of natural vital energy, a strong life force. The key is that they learn how to channel or transmute this powerful energy.
Transmute it how?
Instead of directing it only towards physical expression, they learn to redirect that same intensity, that same drive towards their ambitions, their career, their creative pursuits. It becomes the fuel for achievement.
So it's not about suppressing that energy.
Not at all. It's about channeling it, switching the focus of that powerful desire from purely physical to, say, the desire to build a business or create art or lead a movement. That same energy, when transmuted, becomes creative in a broader sense.
How does that help achieve success?
This focused energy enhances several key things. It boosts your personal magnetism or charisma, makes you mentally more alert and quick witted, and significantly strengthens that healthy ego, that self assertive drive we just talked about. All essential tools.
The text also offers an insight based on this
Hmm.
about why major success often comes later in life.
Right. It suggests that many people, particularly men in the context of the time it was written, don't hit their major stride until they're past 40, maybe 50, or even 60.
Why would that be?
The theory proposed is that in their younger years, they expend the vast majority of this powerful sex energy primarily on its physical outlet. It takes time, maturity, and conscious effort to learn how to harness that same intense drive and redirect it consistently towards building a career, developing ideas, and pursuing long term goals.
So the speed of learning that transmutation process might actually influence the speed at which someone achieves major success.
That's the implication. Learning to channel that fundamental life force into constructive ambition is presented as a cornerstone of high achievement. Okay, so we've mastered the inner landscape, the attitude, the motives, the ego, the energy. Now we get to the absolute core principle, the linchpin of the entire philosophy. The source calls it the supreme secret.
And it sounds deceptively simple, doesn't it? Anything the human mind can believe, the human mind can achieve.
Deceptively simple is exactly right, because we hear phrases like that all the time, maybe on motivational posters.
Right. It can sound a bit cliche if you don't grasp the depth.
Right.
What's the difference here between just wishing for something and truly believing it in the way this philosophy means?
It's the difference between a fleeting thought and a deep foundational conviction. A wish is passive. Oh, I wish I had more money. Your rational mind immediately jumps in with all the reasons why you don't or can't.
Okay.
But a belief, in this context, is something you impress deeply onto your subconscious mind. It's an internalized reality. When you truly believe something is possible, or even that it's already yours in some sense, that belief starts to bypass the doubting conscious mind. It becomes the driving force behind your actions, your thoughts, your plans, your opportunities.
So belief dictates action, which creates the result. How do you actually plant that kind of deep belief, especially if your current reality seems to contradict it?
That's where the practical technique comes in. Autosuggestion. This isn't just affirmations, it's a specific structured method designed to deliberately implant a definite belief into the subconscious. The text gives very clear steps, particularly for acquiring money.
Let's walk through those steps. They seem crucial.
They are. And remember the underlying principle. Service rendered is the cause, financial reward is the effect. You had to give value to receive value. So the steps are 1. Fix in your mind the exact amount of money you desire. It has to be definite, not just more money, but a specific number.
Okay, be precise. Got it.
2. Determine exactly what you intend to give in return for this money. What service, what product, what value will you provide? Be honest and clear about the exchange.
Makes sense. Cause and effect. What's step 3?
3. Write down a clear, concise statement covering the amount of money you desire, the time limit for its acquisition, and what you intend to give in return.
Write it down. Okay. And then?
And this is the absolute key part. Read this written statement aloud twice daily. once just after rising in the morning, and once just before retiring at night. And this is critical as you read it. You must see, feel, and believe yourself already in possession of the money. Visualize it. Feel the emotion of having it.
Why is that emotional charge, that visualization, so important? Why not just read the words?
Because your subconscious mind doesn't really respond to neutral words or logical arguments.
Mm.
It responds to emotion. It responds to feeling. Reading the statement without injecting the strong feeling of desire, the feeling of already having achieved it, is like, well, like typing an email, but never hitting send.
The emotion is what carries the message past the conscious gatekeeper.
Exactly. You have to charge the thought with belief and emotion for it to penetrate and become a new instruction, a new standing order for your subconscious mind.
And that subconscious mind is described as your hidden boss, right? The part that runs your automatic habits and patterns.
That's the idea. You're consciously persuading this hidden box to change its programming, to align your automatic actions and perceptions with the goal you've set.
The power attributed to this is immense. The Blair Hill example is almost unbelievable.
It's certainly astonishing and presented as proof of concept. This was the author's own son. Blair was born without any external ears. Medically, he lacked several crucial parts of the auditory system. The doctors were clear. The boy would never hear. It was deemed physically impossible.
A devastating diagnosis for any parent.
Absolutely. But the author refused to accept that verdict as final. He formed a deep, unwavering belief that his son would hear.
So he applied the autosuggestion principle.
Intensely. He used concentrated, positive suggestion, speaking directly to Blair's subconscious mind while the child slept, night after night, repeating that he would develop normal hearing. This was also combined with physical support through chiropractic adjustments aimed at stimulating nerve pathways.
And the outcome.
According to the account, through this sustained, powerful belief and suggestion, nature was somehow induced to perform an extraordinary feat. It built what was described as an extra set of auditory nerves.
Seriously, nature compensated.
That's the claim. The result was that Blair achieved about 65% of normal hearing capacity, primarily through bone conduction, enough to attend school, communicate effectively, and live a full, normal life, despite the initial impossible prognosis.
So this is presented less as a supernatural miracle and more as the mind influencing physical reality through intense directed belief.
Precisely. A demonstration of the principle that deeply conditioned belief, persistently applied, can potentially influence natural processes to achieve results that seem to defy conventional limitations.
Okay, that's the power within the individual mind. But the philosophy doesn't stop there. The next major tool involves leveraging power outside yourself, the mastermind principle and collective power.
Yes, this is hugely important. It recognizes that you don't have to do everything alone. The definition is key here.
What is the definition?
A mastermind consists of two or more people working in perfect harmony for the attainment of a definite purpose. When minds blend in that state of harmony and shared objective, they create a third, intangible force, a collective mind power, that is significantly greater than just the sum of the individual minds involved. It's about synergy.
Like 1 + 1 = 3, or even more in terms of mental power.
That's the concept, intellectual and even spiritual synergy.
The classic example used to illustrate this is Henry Ford, isn't it? During that libel suit.
Famous example, yes. The Chicago Tribune had called Ford an ignorant idealist. To prove the ignorant part in court, their lawyers started grilling him on basic history facts, things you'd learn in school, trying to humiliate him.
How did Ford react?
He remained completely calm. After a while, he got a bit exasperated and essentially said, "Why should I clutter up my mind trying to remember all this stuff when I have people working for me who can get me any information I need?" He famously stated he had a row of electric push buttons on his desk, meaning if he needed an answer on history, finance, engineering, whatever, he didn't need to know it himself. He just pushed a button, metaphorically speaking, and called in the expert from his team, his mastermind alliance, who did know it.
So it wasn't just about delegating tasks, it was about leveraging collective knowledge, freeing up his own mental bandwidth.
Exactly. He focused his own genius on his core purpose, revolutionizing manufacturing and building cars, and relied on his trusted alliance for all the supporting expertise. He understood the power of the collective mind.
The source also gives some pretty specific rules for making these mastermind alliances actually work, emphasizing that harmony.
Yes, the guidelines are practical.
Strict confidentiality. What's discussed within the group regarding personal plans or problems stays within the group. Trust is paramount.
Okay.
Number 2, unanimous consent for new members Everyone has to agree on bringing someone new in to maintain that essential harmony.
Right. Perfection.
Number three, avoid competitors within the same core group, generally. Again, the focus is on mutual support and trust, not internal rivalry.
Makes sense.
And number four, this one's really interesting, adopt a major service project. The group should take on a significant project aimed at benefiting people outside the group itself. Something like running a personal problem clinic is suggested.
Why is that outward focus important?
It demonstrates that the alliance isn't purely selfish. It reinforces the harmony by directing the collective power towards a positive external goal. It aligns with the principle of service.
That focus on service and influencing others brings us nicely to the final key mechanism for achieving goals, the importance of enthusiasm.
Ah, enthusiasm. It's described as the most contagious of all emotions and the great tool of persuasion.
Why is it considered so powerful in this context?
Because genuine enthusiasm is seen as automatic autosuggestion. When you are truly deeply enthusiastic about your purpose, about the value you offer, you radiate that belief. It's infectious. It bypasses intellectual arguments and speaks directly to the subconscious minds of the people you're interacting with.
There's a great story about this, right? The Tale of Two Letters.
Perfect illustration. The author was trying to get short messages of encouragement for a new book project from some very busy, very important men people like Henry Ford again, even the vice president of the United States at the time.
What happened with the first attempt?
His first letter was all about him. It basically said, "Please do me this favor, write a short message. It will really help my book succeed." It was focused entirely on his own self interest.
And a response.
Zero. Nothing. Not a single reply from these incredibly busy men.
Okay, so what did he do differently with the second letter?
The second letter was completely different in tone. It vibrated with enthusiasm, and crucially, it was framed entirely in terms of service to others. It asked these powerful men if they would appreciate the opportunity to send a message of hope and encouragement to, quote, a few 100,000 of your fellow men who have failed to make their mark and desperately needed guidance.
So shifting the focus from help me to here's a chance for you to help others.
Precisely. It appealed directly to their positive motive, the desire to render service, to contribute something meaningful. It framed participation not as a burden, but as an opportunity for them to make a positive impact.
And the response to that second letter.
100% response rate. Every single person he wrote to replied positively and provided the message. It proved the point.
Yeah.
Genuine enthusiasm coupled with a focus on serving others is incredibly persuasive, almost irresistible.
All right, so we followed the path, mastering the self, understanding the mind's power, using tools like auto-suggestion and mastermind alliances. We've essentially built the framework for success. But now comes a crucial warning, doesn't it? Success itself can be a trap.
A huge trap, which leads to the fundamental question the philosophy forces us to confront. Will you master money or will it master you?
Money is acknowledged as necessary, right? For practical reasons and peace of mind.
Absolutely. The philosophy isn't anti wealth. Poverty creates stress, insecurity, worry. It's hard to have peace of mind when you're constantly struggling for basic needs.
Yeah.
Money is necessary.
But
But the pursuit of wealth, if it becomes obsessive, if it's driven purely by greed, or if it's achieved dishonestly, then the wealth itself becomes corrosive. It can actually steal the very happiness and peace of mind you thought it would bring.
is there an example of this, of money becoming the master?
The text describes a man who was consumed by what it calls accumulation mania. When he eventually went bankrupt, investigators went into this huge warehouse he owned.
And what did they find?
It was packed to the rafters with priceless antique furniture, valuable paintings, all sorts of treasures, all paid for in cash over the years. But here's the thing, none of it had ever been unpacked. None of it was ever displayed or
He
enjoyed.
just bought it and stored it.
Exactly. His entire focus, his entire life energy went into the act of accumulating, acquiring, hoarding, not into the use or enjoyment or sharing of the wealth. He died, as the source puts it, drowning in dollars, completely mastered by the pursuit itself.
That's a chilling image.
Yeah.
It shows how obsession can completely miss the point.
And that obsession can literally drive you mad with worry. There's that famous, almost shocking story of the author's wealthy friend. This friend had amassed a fortune, but he was utterly consumed by anxiety about it. Couldn't sleep, couldn't enjoy life. He had the money, but zero peace of mind.
So what was the author's advice? It was pretty extreme, wasn't it?
Extremely radical. He advised the friend to convert his entire fortune into government savings bonds and then burned them.
Burn millions of dollars. Seriously, how can that possibly align with a philosophy about achieving wealth? Isn't that just throwing it away?
It sounds insane from a purely financial perspective, but think of it as radical psychological surgery. The author reasoned that for this specific man, his money and his peace of mind had become mortal enemies. They could not coexist.
So burning the bonds was symbolic.
Highly symbolic and hopefully therapeutic. By physically destroying the object of his anxiety, the man could literally watch his unhappiness go up in smoke. It was a drastic measure designed to teach him the ultimate lesson. If anything, even vast wealth stands between you and your inner peace, you must choose peace. Your well being is more valuable than the money.
Wow. That really puts material wealth in perspective. It's a tool, not the ultimate goal.
Exactly. And to maintain that ethical and psychological balance, the philosophy introduces another crucial concept drawn heavily from Ralph Waldo Emerson, the law of compensation.
What is the law of compensation?
Think of it as an unseen, unavoidable force, the third silent party present in every single human transaction or action. Emerson's core idea is that every act inevitably rewards itself or punishes itself. The consequence is baked into the action itself.
So cause and effect are intrinsically linked.
Intrinsically. Emerson wrote that crime and punishment grow out of one stem. The punishment, he said, unsuspected ripens within the flower of the pleasure which concealed it.
Meaning, if you do something wrong, something selfish, for a quick gain or pleasure, the negative consequence may be damage to your reputation, loss of trust, erosion of your own character is already developing right there within that pleasurable act. It will emerge eventually.
Yes, and it works the other way too with adversity. Emerson didn't see setbacks or periods where prosperity breaks down as random misfortunes. He saw them as advertisements of a nature whose law is growth.
So challenges force us to grow.
Exactly. What feels like an unfair loss or struggle in the moment, according to this law, eventually reveals a deep remedial force. It pushes us to adapt, to become stronger, wiser, more resilient. The compensation might be delayed, but it's inherent in the process.
If this law of compensation is always operating, then logically we should align our actions with it consciously. This seems to lead directly to the blessed art of sharing, and specifically, the golden rule.
Absolutely. If every action brings its own return, then positive, generous actions must eventually bring positive returns. Shared wealth creates more wealth, not just materially, but in terms of goodwill and opportunity. But the author offers a really important refinement of the standard golden rule.
What's the standard version most people know?
Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Simple reciprocity.
And the
It
refinement.
adds a crucial layer of empathy. The golden rule means we should do unto others as we would wish them to do unto us if our positions were reversed.
If our positions were reversed, that's the key difference.
It forces you to step outside your own perspective. You can't just assume the other person wants or needs the same things you would want in their situation. You have to genuinely try to understand their circumstances, their needs from their point of view. What would they truly find helpful or fair if they were you and you were them?
That requires a much deeper level of consideration and empathy.
Much deeper, it ensures that your actions are genuinely helpful and considerate according to their reality, not just your projection.
This ethical framework, this refined golden rule, apparently inspired a major project the author dreamed of, the Golden Rule Industries of America.
Yes, this was a really ambitious vision. He pictured a nationwide organization with a very specific
What
mission:
was the mission?
to find honest, capable individuals who had sound business ideas but lacked two crucial things: sufficient capital and expert management advice. The organization would provide both.
So, directly addressing the main reasons why potentially good businesses fail.
Exactly. Lack of funding and poor management. The goal was to eliminate those barriers for deserving, ethical entrepreneurs, and it was designed to be self sustaining.
How would that work? A charity.
Not exactly. It was a revolving fund concept. The businesses helped would pay back 10% of their net profits. 5% would be considered payment for the use of the capital and the ongoing management guidance. The other 5% would go towards repaying the initial investment itself.
Okay, so they pay back the loan plus a fee for the help.
Right. But here's the clever part. Once the original investment was fully repaid, the company would continue paying that 5% management service fee indefinitely, and that ongoing income stream wouldn't go to shareholders. It would be plowed right back into the central revolving fund to help finance more entrepreneurs.
So the success of one venture directly fuels the start of others. The wealth keeps circulating and growing within the system, always tied to ethical business and mutual support.
That was the vision. a perpetual engine of ethical enterprise built on the golden rule principle of shared success.
To live this way, to embody this whole philosophy, it really comes down to succeeding in being yourself, authentically and ethically. The text outlines characteristics of someone who's achieved this self mastery.
Yes, several key traits. Such a person is slow to accuse others but quick to forgive. They've learned to convert all defeats and setbacks into assets, into learning opportunities. They hold no racial or religious prejudices. They are fundamentally at peace with themselves and with humanity. And crucially, they will not seek profit or personal gain if it comes at the cost of harming someone else.
That last point ties back to the law of compensation. Harming others ultimately harms yourself.
Precisely. And perhaps the ultimate test of this self mastery, especially over the negative motives like revenge, is again seen in Lincoln.
The story with Edwin M. Stanton.
That's the one. Years before the Civil War, Stanton, who was a prominent lawyer, had treated Lincoln with utter contempt during a legal case they were both involved in. He publicly humiliated Lincoln, calling him a gawky country lawyer and refusing to even sit at the same table with him. Just brutal professional and personal dismissal.
So Lincoln had every reason to resent Stanton deeply.
Every reason. Yet years later, when Lincoln was president and needed the absolute sharpest, most capable, most ruthless organizer to run the War Department during the nation's darkest hour, who did he appoint as Secretary of War?
He appointed Stanton, the man who humiliated him.
He appointed Stanton, because Stanton was objectively the best man for the job. Lincoln completely suppressed any personal feelings of resentment or desire for revenge. He acted solely for the greater good of the Union. That's true self mastery, putting purpose above personal ego or past slights.
That level of self control is incredible. It leads to a kind of freedom, doesn't it? Which brings us to the final, perhaps most profound perspective offered for maintaining peace of mind. The idea that, in the grand scheme of things, ultimately, nothing matters.
This sounds potentially bleak or nihilistic at first glance, but it's presented as a vital psychological tool, a survival mechanism for the mind.
How did the author arrive at this?
He describes experiencing it as a powerful, insistent inner voice during the height of World War I. Just these three words repeating in his consciousness. Ultimately, nothing matters. Later, he sought tangible proof. He had helped President Woodrow Wilson draft a critically important message, something they poured immense effort into. Days after the armistice was signed, that message, which had seemed world-shatteringly important just days before, was utterly valueless. Its perceived significance evaporated overnight. The ultimate importance was an illusion of the moment.
He also related this to Wilson himself later.
Yes. Years later, visiting Wilson, who was frail and dying, apparently heartbroken because the U.S. Senate had refused to ratify the League of Nations, effectively shattering Wilson's life's work and legacy. The author leaned close and whispered those three words. Mr. President, ultimately, nothing matters.
How did Wilson react?
According to the story, Wilson looked up, maybe with a flash of recognition, and replied simply, "Of course not."
So, what's the benefit of adopting this perspective? If nothing ultimately matters, why strive for anything?
It's not about giving up. It's about gaining perspective and freedom from worry. It's the cognitive relief valve. When you internalize that your immediate problems, your successes, your failures, while important to you now, are not cosmically all important, it frees you from crippling anxiety and tension.
Like the author's example of being afraid of traffic police.
Right. He used to be irrationally anxious around them, even when he was driving perfectly legally. Realizing that ultimately a minor traffic stop doesn't really matter in the grand sweep of life helped dissolve that specific fear and many others. It fosters courage and self respect.
So, it allows you to act more boldly, live more freely, without being paralyzed by the fear of small consequences.
Exactly. To live fearlessly, hold your head high, speak your truth, as the writer Elbert Hubbard advised, that's the path to genuine, enduring peace that this perspective unlocks. Hashtag had it outro.
So, looking back at everything we've covered today, we've really traced a comprehensive pathway. It starts with self mastery, controlling your thoughts, your ego, maintaining that positive mental attitude with a definite purpose.
Then harnessing the supreme secret, that deep core belief that what the mind can conceive and believe it can achieve, and using practical tools like autosuggestion and the mastermind principle to make it real.
And finally, grounding it all in ethical action. Understanding the law of compensation, practicing the golden rule with empathy, sharing wealth, and maintaining that ultimate perspective that frees you from crippling worry.
It's a full system. But the journey, the sources emphasize, is an internal battle. which leads us to the final, really provocative thought we want to leave you with.
Mhm.
It comes from a concept communicated by what the author calls the unseen master.
What's the concept?
That life itself is a kind of jungle of life, a black forest, as it's described, that every single one of us has to navigate essentially alone. And the key to getting through successfully is conquering your own inner enemies.
And these enemies are named specifically.
Very specifically, the two primary enemies that prevent us from achieving both wealth and peace of mind are first, fear, particularly fear that stops us from using the full power of our own thoughts. And second, greed, both the greed for material things just for accumulation's sake, and maybe more subtly, the greed for power over other people.
And conquering these inner enemies, fear and greed, is the price of admission.
It's presented as the key. Overcoming them is said to unlock some 26 specific blessings or rewards, things like freedom from worry, true self understanding, sound physical health, harmonious relationships, and yes, material abundance suitable for your needs. It all comes back to inner conquest being the prerequisite for total outer achievement.
So the blueprint is here. We've laid it out. But the power ultimately isn't in the text itself, is it? It's internal. It resides within you, the listener, in your capacity to believe, to act ethically, and to start that journey towards what the philosophy calls mastership today.
That's the final challenge. The potential is there. It's up to each individual to utilize the mind that, as the author would say, the creator gave them